Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video I want to talk about the win over Everton, the improvement that we saw, and break that down in full, as there were some major improvements and some very obvious things that made the difference between Everton and even the wins for those four in that 4-game stretch with Liverpool, Arsenal, Southampton, and Leicester. It's very interesting how different a win it was to the wins we've had prior, and how this is a very good sign, and why it comes down to the things we've been talking about all the last week that we were hoping Ten Hag would see and notice, and that he seems to have taken to heart fully, put in place, and how we move it forward from this, even with, unfortunately, Martial sustaining another injury. I want to talk then about signings. I have some information and news on transfers when it comes to expiring contracts as well as ins and outs. Discuss the news out there about Jude Bellingham and Cody Gakpo and what it all means and where we are heading. So let's get straight into it. The Everton game. So obviously started off a bit of a different setup. We started much more similarly in lineup to, again, how we finished the Ammonia game. Luke Shaw came into the side. Casemiro starting his first game in the Premier League with Bruno and Eriksen, a very attacking lineup against an Everton team that hadn't lost one in their last 7, I believe, and had conceded the fewest goals in the Premier League. Sancho was dropped to the bench with Rashford taking up the left side, which is a very good combination to reestablish his relationship with Luke Shaw. Martial starting again finally down the middle, however briefly that lasted, and Antony on the right. And then the beginning, of course, we had an unfortunate moment where, despite playing well, Everton doing very little, Antony played a pass into Casemiro while he was covered. Casemiro didn't do well to handle it, lost the ball, leading to an Everton break. They scored a very nice goal. Just seems to be how it goes, and United go down 1-0 to a team that has been very tough to score against. That being said, a few minutes later, the press breaks through in the first half. Bruno wins a ball quickly to Martial, finds Antony through on the right, who is absolutely rapid and burned for pace, and he was able to finish in the far corner with his left foot. An advantage of having a left-footed right winger. That angle was open to him. A classic, simple finish, drawing the game up 1-1. Unfortunately, shortly after this, Anthony Martial had to withdraw from the game with yet another injury, this time a different one, a back injury, and that is extremely concerning, as it just seems like it's impossible for him to stay healthy. United pressed well, dominated the first half at something like 71% possession. Casemiro, after his poor beginning, began to really flat out fire. The second goal was a result of him losing the ball, but immediately being tenacious, winning it back, firing it forward to Cristiano Ronaldo, who was able to score his 700th goal, and which ended up being the winner, as a late goal by Marcus Rashford was ruled out for an almost unthinkable handball. That was just something horrific by VAR, something that unbelievable, especially considering goals that had been allowed this very weekend and other handball situations just hours earlier across the Premier League. So, very unfortunate. There was a lot of positives to take away from it. Rashford was fantastic as well. He, aside from should have having that goal, he created a lot. He linked up well. He put a great cross into Casemiro that Casemiro should have finished with his head as well. There was a lot of goal-scoring chances. There was a lot of opportunities. It was still a very fast-flowing game where United aren't parked around the box trying to make chances, which is good because that didn't really work for Simonia. But scoring quickly in transition, but that didn't mean it was very defensive. The second half was a lot less ball dominant. The press fell off a little bit. I think that personally, Eriksen tiring wasn't the best. The positional sense of Bruno and Ronaldo wasn't the best. I'll show that in a minute. And the press just wasn't there in the same way that it was. Antony also completely fell out of any sort of interaction in the second half, and I'll show again why that happened as well. And that's not a call on Antony, I should say, but rather due to the change in setup when Martial went off the pitch. I thought Rashford was great. Luke Shaw was fantastic. He was very proactive defensively In fact, it was mostly his defensive work I'd give praise for, despite that being the area he's criticized most for. Once again, reiterating the point that I've tried to make, when you're trying to play a proactive, progressive, and possession-based style, Luke Shaw is a very, very good player. He is not a good last line of defense defender, defending deep in the final third. He's just not it. But winning the ball high, progressing in the midfield, offering himself in positions to help you maintain control, that's where Luke Shaw shines, and he's shown very, very strongly in that regard. I think Luke Shaw, Rashford, and Casemiro would have been my standouts for the game. Casemiro really, really drove into it. Once again, he had a large number of passes and touches, a very high number. He involved himself. The assist to the goal, should have scored another. He certainly made up for the mistakes he made. He's very aggressive, and he allowed you to really play higher. So let's talk about that next, the positions, because I want to show the big, big change, what's very, very apparent now. Here, so on the right is the positions. You'll see why Antony was not involved in the second half. Out there completely by himself. Bruno and Ronaldo need to figure this out, because this was the only thing that didn't work and was really the problem in the second half. You need Bruno. I'm going to show the prior ones. Bruno over to the right. Rashford, when he was playing striker, was holding center. They've got to figure that out. Ronaldo needs to come back to the middle, and Bruno needs to come a little bit deeper and over to the right, because you can see Antony is on an island for most of the game, hence why he was not that involved. But him and Rashford held width well, and the important part of that is seeing that they did hold width well, not cutting in just because he was isolated. That does open up space, open up channels, and allow you to, still have an outlet. The back four looked a lot like prior. You see that kind of diamond with the center backs. Same thing, but way higher up the pitch. Way, way, way higher up the pitch. And rather than it being Malaysia as deep as Casemiro, Luke Shaw spent most of his time up on the halfway line being very aggressive. So what was the result in this? Well, look on the left. This is one game, but this is more like it. Remember when I showed this one prior, you can see expected threat received, touches, incisive passes completed, threat generated, box entries, recoveries in opposition half, defensive actions in the final third. All of this was near bottom. Well, versus Everton, United were second in the league at the weekend for recoveries in the opposition half, second in the league for defensive actions in the final third, fifth in expected threat received, second in possession, fourth in touches, sixth in incisive passes, sixth in expected threat generated. Successful box entries was still low. United don't get in the box that much. They tend to score when they do. But what does this tell us? United had one of the best presses in the league over the weekend. They pressed high. This whole defensive line moved way up, and these gaps were way smaller. You can see the front line isn't much higher, but the whole team is way more compact. It's all in the middle third. Nobody's back in the final third. And why is that possible is because of two things. One, Casemiro coming into the team, giving you more license for everybody to push up higher, to be more aggressive, to close these gaps. And Luke Shaw was huge in his defensive work behind the wingers. As soon as the ball would get behind Rashford, he would clean up every single time when they tried to break the press. That was massive. And it allowed Eriksen and Bruno to press higher as well. So that was the key difference maker, winning it high and maintaining possession, something that Casemiro is going to be a game changer, and that's why he has to play, and it's why Luke Shaw has to play. They're both much more progressive and much more proactive in the way that they defend and attack. This is what you want to see. Interestingly enough, it looks a lot more like the first week, even though there you could see part of the problem was recoveries in opposition half was poor. So we maintained possession, but we did not press well. The press was bad. It was broken easily, and that was what was wrong with the first 2 weeks. So, this looks like a hybrid. If you look positionally, it looks like how we played during the winning run. The positional sense was a little bit better up front during the winning run, and that is something that needs to be improved. Fernandes and Eriksen spreading a bit more, and the central striker staying centrally. But the back four pushing up about 15, 20 yards higher and allowing the gaps to be closed. Luke Shaw really pressing up the pitch. That's the difference maker. That's what allowed United to play better. And that's what really was the difference versus Everton, and why I believe that it was the most improved game that United have had and the best game United have, and the blueprint for how to move forward rather than the games that we saw during the 4-game win streak, Leicester and Southampton, where they were settled in deep. And surprise, surprise, that high defensive line was done without a speedster center back in Rafael Varane. It was Lindelof and Martinez. So it can be done when you have the right setup. The team defense was excellent. Everton posed virtually no threat all game. In terms of improvements, I think that 11 that you had there with Martial injured, unfortunately, is the best 11. I would keep Rashford wide and start Ronaldo moving forward simply because it worked. But Ronaldo needs to stay more centrally. He really does. And Bruno needs to move to the right more, so there's more angles for everybody. Those are the two things, positionally and improvement-wise, I think you need to see there. But it's got to be the same setup with Rafael Varane, who fortunately was able to come on at the end of the game and will likely be fit for the next games. He should obviously be starting in the back line. But that's what you need. That's the setup. That's it. That's the 11. I think that there was times in the second half where you could have seen the energy of Fred help, where Eriksen was falling off quite a lot, and that would have improved things. But otherwise, that is the best 11, I believe, strongly. You got to keep Rashford and Antony on the wings, holding with, interplaying well. The biggest improvements I'd like to see is Dalot getting higher up as a fullback and really participating and tilting the other way at times so that he can overlap with Antony because he's way too isolated out there. Bruno moving over to the right to help him, and Ronaldo staying more central. I think those are the things that are going to make the difference, but otherwise it was a near perfect setup, perfect pressing game, perfect off-ball movement, perfect out-of-possession performance from United in possession. It was a little sloppy at times, but that could be improved, and that would have been an easy 4-0, 5-0 win. Personally, I could have seen that from that game. So really excellent, really fantastic performance overall, and I'm very happy with it. So moving on from that, I have some news here about expiring contracts, because obviously United have an enormous number. Tom Heaton, David De Gea, Ronaldo, Dubravka, Luke Shaw, Fred, Jones, Dalot, Rashford, Tuanzebe, Garnacho, all of them out of contract next summer. Many of them have options moving forward. Where it stands is that in terms of the departures, in terms of these contracts, is that it's expected for Heaton and Ronaldo to go. Dubravka, I don't believe. I'm not sure what the deal is with that. Luke Shaw will be extended and will likely get a new contract. Fred's option is likely going to be picked up. Jones will go. Rashford will be extended, and then he's likely to also get a new contract in the new year. Tuanzebe will go. Garnacho will be extended. Dalot, the option will be picked up and also likely to get a new contract in the new year. Shaw, Dalot, and Rashford are the ones that are likely to get a new contract, and that those are the players that are likely to be extended beyond all of that. So that is where those expiring contracts are at. Who's likely to go, who's not. Players like De Gea and Fred are likely to I shouldn't compare the two of them. De Gea, again, you've seen sort of talk of a new contract. If there's a new contract, it will be at a limited, it will be on a limited role, and a limited role with wages cut. That's how he'll have to extend. And with Fred, the option will likely be taken up, but he'll likely be dropped after that and allowed to go on a free when he's 31 or 32. That makes sense, and that's where it leads me to the situation with this striker and midfield thing. There's been some debate within the club recently, which is why you've been seeing the news about Jude Bellingham and the whole midfield situation, as well as Frenkie de Jong. The thought process is, if they cannot get a top striker next summer, get a top midfielder, because Jude Bellingham, Frenkie de Jong, and Declan Rice are all potentially on the move or available, and any one of those would likely improve the team dramatically in a position of need. However, the problem you're coming into is budget and funds and where you need this. Again, coming back to a few areas. The goalkeeper situation has to be addressed, but will likely be addressed with the reduction of De Gea's salary and the selling of Dean Henderson. At right back, Wan-Bissaka will be leaving the club in the future. As far as I understand, it's basically been told it's over for you here. All clubs agreed on that. The club and player agreed that he will be let go next summer, most likely, or even, well, not sooner, but let go next summer with Ethan Laird coming in. So the money in the budget is still, the debate is striker or midfielder, and there's two different camps. As I said, the thought process is if we can't get the best striker, then why don't we get a best midfielder and just get somebody in the front line? However, this problem continues to be compounded by the fact that Tony Martial cannot stay healthy, because as it stands right now, United are looking at Ronaldo leaving and Tony Martial not being an option at striker with the continued injury situation. That's what's happening from some of the individuals at the football department. So they're saying, no, we got to spend our money on the forward position, because right now we only have Anthony Sancho and Rashford as senior forwards. That's it. That they can rely on, that they think are good enough. That's only 3. And so you may need 2 players. You may need Cody Gakpo and a striker to have a full contingent of 5 at the level that you're thinking of. So this is the problem. And if come the end of the season, as it appears now, Anthony Martial cannot be relied on as a starting striker, the money will not be there for Jude Bellingham, Frankie de Jong, or Declan Rice. Okay, so that's what's been made clear. And so it's really going to be a bit dependent on Martial. If he can stay healthy, they'd be willing to get someone like Ivan Toney, or Gakpo in January, who is an option, but if Ronaldo leaves in January, but next summer otherwise. But if Tony is not ready, Tony Martial is not ready, is not able to be relied on, as it seems like now, then the suggestion from people involved in the football decisions at the moment is to spend the budget on the striker and address the midfield the following summer, unless there's, of course, a takeover. So there was money there. They were looking at Jude Bellingham. They were looking at Frankie de Jong. There's a lot of push for that. And Erik ten Hag knows he wants another midfielder in the future. However, it's really becoming an issue of the striker situation. So, it's a balance between there, and there's 2 different thought processes in the club, but it's almost being forced in the direction of a striker simply due to the injuries of Anthony Martial. And that is unfortunate, but that is just where things are at. They have maintained contact with these 3 main midfielders that they feel could be huge, dynamic midfielders that could be moving this summer. But again, the problem is, one, would they get any of them? Is Jude Bellingham going to choose Manchester United? I don't know about that. Is Frankie de Jong actually going to leave this time? We don't know. And would Declan Rice go to United, or is he now open to joining Chelsea with the new ownership and all of that, and them being more open to signing him? We don't know. And so there's a lot of still factors here, but they are maintaining an eye on those 3. And it's really just going to come down to who can they get. Who can they get, and are they going to be forced to make some decisions based on injuries? Okay, that's where things are at. So leave me your questions below. Let me know what you think about that situation. What is more important? What do you think? If we cannot get a player like Osimhen, who's just extremely expensive, top striker, is it better to get Jude or Frankie de Jong or Rice and go cheap on the striker? Or is the Martial situation and Ronaldo leaving so desperate that we should spend every dollar possible on a striker? My opinion is the striker is more necessary, that we can last another year in the midfield. I think our midfield is looking really good, especially as Casemiro's getting in there. I think there's a lot of options. I think we could do really well with it. And a striker would be a much, much bigger thing right now. That's how I feel. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on, and I will see you in the next video.